This is the worst reviewed car of all time. It's called the Yugo, and auto journalists have been crapping on it for decades.
But is it really that bad?
Today, we're gonna go claim by claim and test everything for ourselves and give this thing a fighting chance.
And in the end, we're gonna take it on the scariest on-ramp in LA to see if it can get up to speed without killing us.
What was that?
I don't know. That was a very loud, crunchy noise.
Welcome to Donut.
Our first claim for the Yugo is poor build quality.
Auto journalists who reviewed this thing back in the day said that the build quality was horrible overall, so let's just look around and see if that claim is true. First thing right off the bat, hello. Clearly a cheap car. There's no plastics covering up the naughty bits of the seatbelt. There is no glove box in the Yugo. There are instead some more exposed hardware down here and a mystery bulge.
Mystery bulge?
There's a mystery thing here. Oh!
It's the ashtray.
The needle for the speedometer is broken off, which is annoying. And it has a very optimistic high number of 110 miles per hour. So I don't know if that's gonna work. Yeah, we have vents here, but Justin, you can just look through them into a mess of wires further down in the dash. I know, but where do these actually connect to get you air? It's a good thing the windows roll down.
Yeah, well, speak for yourself.
Oh. Oh no. The car's almost 35 years old at this point. I don't know if judging it solely on the interior after decades is the best metric.
Well, the reason this car was so poorly built has a lot to do with its cost. Brand new, this thing was only $4,000, which is around $11,000 today. This was the first and only Yugoslavian car that made it to the US market. It was made by a company called Crvena Zastava, which literally means red flag. You think the people that bought these would have seen the huge red flag. In reality, the Yugo is a clone of the Fiat 127. Crvena Zastava licensed the design from Fiat and built their version in the motherland. And one thing that communist Yugoslavia didn't have access to that Fiat did was purpose-built machinery. And that's how you get panel gaps this big.
Welcome to the island of Oahu, home to tranquil beaches, lush rainforests, and an adrenaline-packed, all-year-round festival designed exclusively for you. This is the Crew Motor Fest, available now, and guess what? I'm in the game. Whether you want to tear up the streets of Honolulu, get all muddy on a volcano, or just cruise the beach with friends, Motorfest brings together over 600 vehicles to help you embark on the automotive adventure of a lifetime. One of the best new features is the playlist, a series of unique campaigns celebrating all aspects of car culture. Everything from vintage classics to electric supercars. And if you love donuts, you're gonna love the donut playlist that I've got planned for you. I'm gonna be there personally, challenging your skills in a high-low time attack, a mobility race, and more. I had a ton of fun working with Ubisoft to bring Donut into Motorfest, and now it is your turn to have fun, because right now you can play the Crew Motorfest for free until September 17th on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. To learn more, click the link below, and I will see you in Hawaii.
Zastava literally spared every expense they possibly could when making this thing. From the metal stamping to the interior, this was just supposed to be a cheap commuter car. And the only way we can really judge it is if we go drive it.
You wanna go first?
No, let's get this over with, please.
All right.
The second claim we're gonna test is dreadful ride quality.
I legitimately thought an air compressor was running when I was walking into the shop right now.
Okay, this car sucks. What was that? Oh God, what's all that noise?
How's that feeling, Nolan?
First impressions, Justin, are not, oh, that was weird. Making a lot of noises that I don't like. This might just be an age thing. It says it's empty even though it has a full tank. So that's not great. All right, this is full throttle, Justin.
This is?
Yeah. Oh God.
Oh, we didn't really feel the bump.
No, but we heard it.
But we heard the bump in a lot of ways.
I will give it that. We didn't feel it. Here we go. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
You know what, honestly?
The ride comfort is good for the driver, not the car.
Americans ended up hating the Yugo. But here's the thing. It was never meant for the US market. It was a complete fluke that it ever made it to our shores in the first place. The Yugo was made in a developing country coming out of isolation and produced solely to mobilize the average person. For Yugoslavians, it symbolized freedom and livelihood. It meant they could go to their grandma's house 2 towns over. That's why I think it's unfair to compare it to cars like the Volkswagen Golf or the Honda Civic, even though we're gonna do that later. Those cars were built under optimal conditions in countries that were thriving at the time. And if anything, the Yugo should be compared to cars like the Volkswagen Beetle or the Piaggio Ape. These cars were utilitarian vehicles that empowered the everyman and fit perfectly into the industrial machine like a cog and helped build up countries' economies after war.
For the third claim, we're gonna test this Yugo's handling and braking. On paper, the Yugo has all the buzzwords that you're looking for in a car from the 80s. Disc brakes, rack and pinion steering, independent suspension. But just because they have all those features does not mean they're executed very well. As Edmund said when they reviewed an '89 Yugo, the Yugo is slow, low grip, and high effort. Sure, it's got a rack and pinion, but the Yugo doesn't even have power steering. You have to throw your entire body weight into most of your turns. Not looking for a workout, just trying to get from A to B.
That was weird. The car is kind of sailing all over the road. When I let off the gas and get back on it, like goes
yanks
left to right. Like that is weird.
Please don't pull me over, officer.
Yeah.
I'm just in a pile of
This is not good, dude. Having a car change direction depending on what the throttle's doing, I'm gonna give that a fail as well.
Yep.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention one of the biggest complaints critics had of the Yugo, its transmission. Of all the parts that need exact and precise machining, transmissions are some of the most important, and it wouldn't be long until we had troubles with ours. The shifter is pretty floppy down here, but the shifts themselves are actually pretty notchy. So the throttle is sticky, it's idling at like 3 grand.
We think.
We don't have a tach, but it sounds like it. Man, we're not even a quarter mile from the shop, and I'm already feeling
eventful.
I can already see why. In spite of its poor performance, the Yugo sold incredibly well. Much of that was due to Malcolm Bricklin's ability to create a frenzy with marketing. Yeah, that Malcolm Bricklin, the Canadian guy with that Bricklin SV1. The kids were calling it Yugo Mania, and people were legitimately psyched about the Yugo before it became a national joke.
Put it in H!
140,000 Yugos were sold in the US. But if this car was so bad, why'd they bring it over here in the first place? Well, it turns out that a bunch of unlikely events lined up perfectly to help this car hit the US market. It may seem really weird now, but in the mid-1980s, capitalism-obsessed, Reaganized America loved communist Yugoslavia. Why the heck is that? Well, because Yugoslavia had kind of broken away from the USSR's influence. While Russia boycotted the 1984 Olympics right here in LA, Yugoslavia said heck that and sent a bunch of athletes. Then they hosted the Winter Olympics that year in Sarajevo. But this was just part of the equation. Fiat had just pulled out of the US market, which meant that it wasn't a conflict of interest for the Yugo being based off of the Fiat 127. A Czech immigrant living in LA named Miroslav Kefert had the idea to ride this pro-Yugoslavia wave and imported 3 cars for the LA Auto Show in 1984. The no-frills display got a lot of attention, most importantly, from one Malcolm Bricklin.
The second and last test of our Yugo is one of the biggest standards for performance, and that's acceleration. The manufacturer claimed it could go 0 to 60 in 14.3 seconds, which is horrible for even then. But some reviewers clocked in at more like 18 seconds. Can we even get up to 60 miles an hour? Let's heck around and find out. Malcolm ended up being one of the main partners to import the Yugo into the United States. But what motor did American buyers get when they purchased the Yugo? Was it the same 6-liter V8 in the Bricklin SV1? No, I don't think so.
All right, one of the first things you notice on the Yugo might be this awesome offset hood scoop. You might be thinking, all right, ram air, nice. But when you open the hood, you might be a little disappointed. That sick looking hood scoop feeds this air box attached to the firewall, not to the engine. In fact, the real intake for that carburetor is floppy tube right here. Another thing you might notice is this giant cavity behind the air cleaner here, and that's actually where you'd keep the spare tire. I mean, look right here. The jack, it's still in here. Wow, would not trust that with my life. But enough about that. What is this engine anyway? The engine under the hood of this Yugo is a 1.1 liter inline 4-cylinder. At a time when fuel injection was the obvious choice for new cars, this engine had a single carburetor right under this air filter right here. And that's because when this car debuted, it was already more than 10 years old. And it was based on a car design that was more than 20 years old. So if you think about it, the Yugo was already at a disadvantage the second it showed up in the US. And just for reference, the last carbureted engine to be sold in the United States was a 1990 Subaru Justy. So the Yugo was way behind its time in that respect. And just to be clear, carbureted engines can be very reliable, but probably not ones built in a communist country on the brink of collapse. Which brings us to our next point.
Okay, Nolan, so we're about to get onto the freeway.
Yeah?
I have a heads-up display speedometer here so
Okay.
that I can time our 0 to 60 from a dig.
Great.
And go. Oh,
Full throttle.
we're at 15, 19, 23.
Oh, there's a lot of-
27, 29, 30, 33, 36, 38, 40, 41, 43, 45, 46, 50.
I'm full throttle, dude.
55.
Come on. Come on.
60.
Yes! Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Oh, no. Uh-oh.
A lot of noises are happening, Justin. How long did that take?
35.3 seconds.
I don't like this. What was that?
I don't know. That was a very loud, crunchy
That was
noise.
a weird noise.
Can you shift anymore?
Something's happening. The car's getting hot, though. Car's
How
getting
hot?
It's at almost in the red.
Hey, we might need to cool off.
I don't know if this thing has a fourth gear.
We need to pull over.
That doesn't sound.
What
Oh,
is that?
the shift. Oh,
Is the shifter stuck?
the shifter.
It's broken.
I think the transmission broke.
It's
Or-
making,
Transmission broke?
Or
Yeah.
the linkage is not connected to the shifter. Reliability, we broke down. So
we're not even a mile from the
we're
office.
also it was very slow. So I don't know, man. You know, we've had videos in the past where we had to completely change the premise of the video, and I think today is probably one of those days because this is not safe, and I'm a little nervous right now.
It turns out that our Yugo was destined to break down. The 3 Yugos that Miroslav took to the LA Auto Show broke down en route. Yes, they drove them to the show. No, they did not trailer them. Miroslav may have had all that entrepreneurial passion, but no amount of passion could make up for faulty manufacturing. So the last thing on our checklist was going to be reliability, but our car broke down 10 minutes into filming. So that question was answered very quickly.
Quality control in the final years of Yugoslavia was not the best. Factories in communist countries had terrible working conditions and very little oversight. Consistency also wasn't their top priority either. That's all to say that the high tolerances they had while manufacturing these cars led to some very unreliable parts. Now, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who describes Fiat as reliable. Now, just imagine a Fiat built in a poorer country with less regulations.
Yugo proved to be unreliable AF. But you know what cars were reliable in the 80s?
Hondas, Toyotas, Nissans, basically anything that was making its way out of Japan at the time. Starting at $5,800 or $16,000 today, the Honda Civic scratched the same itch the Yugo did by providing a no-frills commuter car, only it did it way more reliably.
Well, that's because the D16 in this EF Civic is such a bulletproof engine. It's not only reliable, but it makes more stock horsepower than 2 Yugo engines with the same amount of cylinders. That's not even mentioning the tuning potential of it. Granted, the SI was $11,000 new back in 1991, which is more than double the price of the Yugo, but the power and reliability of a Honda put it head and shoulders over the rest of the other economy cars that are available at the time.
Now let's find out what exactly broke on our Yugo.
So a rubber piece holding the shift linkage to the transmission, a $10 part, broke. Obviously an old rubber piece is probably not long for this world.
But remember, $10 was probably worth 25% of this vehicle.
We truly did want to give this thing a fair shake. I mean, it's not a great car, but I also think people kind of piled on maybe back in the 80s and 90s because it was.
So Nolan, Is it really the worst car ever made?
It's the worst car I've ever driven.
It's worse than the Reliant Robin, and that's technically not a car.
You know, they tried their best, but Yugo did not make a good car. If you want to learn more about this car, we did an episode of our history podcast, Past Gas, #1 automotive podcast in the world. You can learn all about this thing. There's also a wheelhouse video we did a couple years ago on this thing, but honestly, I think today's videos, I like today's video. Make sure you subscribe. Follow Justin on social media @Justin Freeman. Follow me @Nolan J. Sykes if you'd like. We'll see you next time.